Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for a regular scheduled meeting of the Operations Management, Budget, and Government Accountability Committee. My name is Councilman TJ Clark. I serve as the committee's co-chair, as well as the council's majority leader, and I'm joined by our other co-chair, Council President Mallory Rosado, who's a voting member, Councilperson Shirley Surgeon, who's a voting member, Councilperson Tiana Hercules, Councilperson John Gale, who is a voting member, and also that is it for now that I see. And we also are joined by the administration as well on here, which we have our Corporation Counsel, Howard Rifkin, our Director of Economic Development, Aaron Howard, our Director of HR, Marlene Fleeting. Looks like our Assistant Director is joining Marlene too in the video as well. And am I missing anybody? It appears not. And we are streaming from HPA-TV.org as well as Comcast and Infinity and also to Frontier on channel 693. So bear with me as I'm trying to pull up the agenda. Here we go. And also too, Councilperson Tiana Hercules is a voting member as well. If my council colleagues would allow me, I just want to get some items that are going to be, get some items out of the way that we will look to postpone.
So moved.
So these items would be Leanne Rawls, our Director of Finance, is on as well as our Chief Financial Officer. So the items that I would look to postpone due to information that we have not received yet from the State of Connecticut Office of School Construction and Grants would be Mayor Bronin with the company ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the McDonough Middle School, which is item 2.1, item 2.2, which is for Moylan, and item 2.3, which is for Parkville Community School. Would you mind?
I'd like to make a motion to postpone those items.
All right.
Second.
Motion has been made to postpone these items by Council President Rosado, second by Councilman Gale. Any questions on this matter? Any questions? Leanne, would you like to, is there any additional information would you like to share with the committee regarding these items?
Thank you, Councilman. I don't have any additional information at this time.
Thank you. Do you know when we will be hearing back from the state?
I do not. I did not get an estimated time frame.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other discussion regarding these items? Seeing none, all in favor of postponing these three items indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing and hearing none, the ayes have it. These three items are postponed to our next meeting. All right, moving on. We will start off with item 2.4, which is Mayor Bronin with the company resolution amending Chapter 2, Section 350 of the Hartford Municipal Code that had a public hearing of Monday, October 17th, 2022 at 7 p.m. All right, I will kick it off to the HR team.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Council President, all the council members, Leanne, Howard, and everybody else on the call. Thank you for allowing us to present this evening. Thank you to Deb. She's my deputy HR director. So thank you to you for joining us. This is an ordinance that is pending a 1.5% general wage increase to the maximum salaries of non-union employees that are occupying a non-union and unclassified position. Roughly, we have 97 non-union employees. full-time. This would apply to full-time and part-time, and roughly will cost around $146,000. So that's kind of the gist.
And if I could just add to Marlene's statement, all of the departments basically have a net of full-time payroll availability within their budget, so they would cover this $146,000 cost. There's only one department that will have or may potentially have a budget issue at the end of the year, and that's the internal audit department. At max, the budget effect would be $2,000 over budget, and that's assuming that they spend everything that's in their non-personnel budget.
That was my question, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for HR Finance? Councilman Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I assume that this is being recommended by the administration because all of our unionized employees are receiving a similar increase commencing? Let's see, this one's going to be commencing January 1, 2023.
Yes, that assumption is correct, Councilman Gale. As you all know, we have 7 labor unions here. We contractually negotiate every year or when the contract is up for negotiation, and they receive some very generous increases. And non-union has not. Last year they received a 1.5 in 2021 July, and before that they received a 2% increase for all employees that were employed for at least 4 years in 2019. But before that, the last one was in 2009. So to stay competitive, to try to retain employees, me personally, I have a shop of all non-union employees, and they are processing all of these increases. They're seeing these increases from the unions. They are, being scouted by other competitors to try to get them to move from the city and go. And as you all know, we can't compete with some organizations like the state. However, we're trying to retain our talent as much as possible.
Is this, I don't have in mind what the other union increases are. Is this at the same level as the increases for most of the unions, or is this still below what some of the unions are getting January 1?
It's still below, but it's something.
It's the same as what police will get in January of 2023. Some of the other unions are getting theirs in July. As opposed to January, but they've ranged from 1.5% increases. I think the highest so far has been the 3% in HPA got 3%, but that was all they received. And police has a couple of 3s, I believe, and a 2.5 and a 1.5 or something like that.
So I'm just wondering, I mean, it has been apparent that we've had difficulty hiring people at all level of government. I believe you stated that this would affect 97 positions, and I'm just wondering, of those 97 positions, how many are currently vacant?
These are all 97 filled positions.
Okay, so let me turn it the other way then. Are there any vacancies in our non-union positions, and if so, how many vacancies do we have in our non-union positions?
That would be something I would have to get back to you on. I don't want to throw out any numbers that aren't factual.
I don't think
it's too many though. Yeah, I don't think we have a lot of non-union.
Yeah, I mean, I know we were dealing at one point with, I think the number that was being thrown around was somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 vacancies in our city workforce. And I guess I would just wonder how many of those are non-union.
Not many of them.
Right.
And Councilman Gale, if I could add, even if a non-union position was filled in January, they wouldn't be here for the full budget year, so it wouldn't have an effect on the budget either.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up on the same trend of thought that Councilman Gale started with this question, if the increase is only 1.5% and it's less than the remaining unions. Question to Leon, is there enough money in the budget to have gone to a 2% instead of 1.5% since you're using all the remaining funds in that departmental budget?
I would have to do an analysis on the unclassified positions to see if it could manage a 2% or 2.5% or even 3%. But you know, with a lot of vacancies within all of the departments, I still think that there's favorability in the full-time salary line for most departments to cover this increase, even if it was a little higher. With again, noting that internal audit would be the only department that might run into difficulties.
Okay. So if after your analysis, and if they had enough funds in their budget to do a 2%, what would we need to do? Do we have to approve this tonight? Or what would you suggest if there's a recommendation on the floor to bringing that up to 2%? As the personnel director stated, if we want to retain, our good employees, and also to bring in new employees, because, there's a tight labor market out there, how would you suggest we go about doing so?
I would defer that to legal, to Howard, who's on the call.
Oh, Howard is
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Good evening, Attorney Rifkin. I didn't see you here.
I'm invisible. To answer your question, I think that the proposal that the mayor offered was sized in such a way as to ensure that the additional expenses could be covered. And as Leanne suggested, that because of lapses in the various budgets that are projected, a 1.5% increase effective January 1st is something that can be covered. If it were to be amended to increase it to 2%, then I think some analysis would have to be done to determine whether or not we already know that in audit that they can't necessarily cover it, but by a very small amount of deficit. I just don't know the answer to the question. And
okay, I understand.
So I think one of the important things is to, in my view, try to get this in front of the council for its next meeting on December 12th, because processing the increase will take a bit of an effort. And so delaying it, I think, will create all sorts of issues in payroll. And plus employees won't get the increase.
Right, General. Thank you, Attorney Rifkin. So then let me just ask you one other question. Is there anything precludes us for putting that additional 0.5% in the upcoming fiscal year 23-24 budget?
Through you, Mr. Chair, obviously, any proposal that the council wants to put forward is at your discretion and your judgment. So,
Okay, thank you, Attorney Rifkin. So you're saying, okay, all right. So I just have to go lobby the rest of my council members to see if something could be done for the remaining 0.5% for the upcoming fiscal year budget. Thank you, Attorney Rifkin.
sure.
Thank you. I think I saw Council President's hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marlene, how many employees are non-union employees for the audit department? Is it 1 or 2?
I'm sorry, say it one more time, I'm sorry.
How many employees are affected by this in the audit department?
Oh, 1.
Just 1 employee?
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Okay, and what is the number right now of vacant positions within the city of Hartford?
In totality, including union?
In totality, yes.
Well, last time we did it, it was like 170. or so. But to get a concrete number, I'll get it to you. I can get it to you in the morning just for facts, but around 170 more or less.
Okay, so I would propose a motion to send this back to council with no recommendation until we hear from the finance department with Councilwoman's surgeon's request to see if we could go up a 0.5% increase. Councilman Gale?
I second that motion. I have a question with respect to it, back to Leanne Rawls. I believe you indicated that this was the cost of this increase is about $150,000. Would it be a fair statement that to go from 1.5% to 2% would increase the $150,000 to $200,000?
Correct. I just don't know, Councilman, if pushing up the extra 0.5% would put any other departments in the same position as internal audit.
Understood. But that's a half-year effect. So what we're really saying is that come next July, we're adding a total of, if we went up from 1.5% to 2%, for instance, 200,000. Come next July, we've really added 400,000 to next year's budget.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, I still second the motion.
Thank you. So a motion has been made by Council President Rosado, second by Councilman Gale, to send this back to council with with no recommendation, pending a report from the and also a report from the finance department regarding the amount for 0.5% increase. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
All right. Is there any discussion? Sorry.
I'm sorry, Councilman, can you repeat the first part? You kind of like blurred out for a moment.
It was the motion that we are sending this back that was made. We're sending this back to the full council with no recommendation, pending the questions being answered by HR.
Okay, the number of vacancies, you mean?
Number of
Okay.
vacancies in totality, not just non-unions, in totality. And also the question to Director Rawls regarding the amount for an increase of the 0.5%.
Okay.
Councilman, if I may, how would you like this information? Would you like just an email? Would you like to this formally to come back to council through another resolution, or how do you prefer?
I think email is fine, and then we can always make an amendment on the floor regarding this.
Yep.
Got
So
you.
email is
Thank
fine.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And don't forget, we do have a meeting on Monday. So
Oh, no, I'll get you the numbers and the first thing in the morning.
thank you. The sooner the better, so we can spend Thanksgiving with our families. All of
Absolutely.
all of us. All right. Any other discussion on this item? Any other discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposals? Any abstentions? Seeing and hearing none, the ayes have it. This motion is passed, sending this item back to council with no recommendation. Thank you very much. Next item is item 2.5, Mayor Broner with accompanying ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 19 of the Municipal Code that had a public hearing on October 17th, which is regarding the SFI Ethics Code Letter and Ordinance. And is HR going to make this presentation? Or, oh, here we go. I see Corporation Counsel. I see Lori. I didn't see Lori before.
I
Hi,
can
Lori.
speak on this one, Councilman Clark, if that's
Thank
okay.
you very much. That's fine.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So this is an ordinance change to the Ethics Code, particularly as related to Section 2-906, which is a section that lays out the various employees and commission members who are required to complete a statement of financial interest form. And what the recommendation is here is first to expand that list to add a few additional commissions to include the Hartford Golf Oversight Commission, the Commission on Housing, and the Fair Rent Commission. And the theory behind that is that those particular commissions were not previously included as required to complete a statement of financial interest form. And from time to time, they are really involved with making recommendations around property-related issues, recommendations for use and development of various city properties. And so the recommendation would be that it could be helpful for those commissioners to complete the statement of financial interest form in an effort to really assess and self-report any potential conflicts that could come up in their private work and anything that they're being asked to do in their official capacity as a city commissioner board member. The second proposed change is with respect to adding to that list a new position that was recently created at the city, and that's the Inspector General position. And so while the current language in section 2-906 essentially states that, any person holding a position or any equivalent position created as a result of department and or commission consolidations or reorganizations would be required to complete a form, it doesn't capture new positions that are created. So from time to time, a department, maybe with a new administration, might add a deputy position or assistant position, and that potentially would be captured under the current language, but a new position like the Inspector General wouldn't be. So the thought here was that it would be important for that position in an effort of transparency to be required to complete a statement of financial interest form. And then the very last piece of the proposed revision deals with trying to have more of a streamlined effort in the future when situations like this might arise where a new position might be created, where it is a high-level position that would be helpful for that individual to complete a form, to allow for the Corporation Counsel to be able to give their opinion on adding positions for which a statement might be required to be completed. So those are the three basic areas that this revision is proposing, and no other proposed revisions to any other section of the Ethics Code. So I'll just pause there to see if I can answer any questions or clarify anything for anyone.
Thank you very much. Any questions from our committee members? Hearing.
No, there's a question which is probably doesn't have anything to do with it. But when you talked about reports for positions or commissions that has to do with housing, one thing that just came to mind, do we have any oversight, or do we require it, or do we require any sort of reporting for quasi-public agency that we, that's off of the city of Hartford? For example, like the land bank or anything like that?
Not under the current ethics code, and the code essentially applies to any city employees, city officials, city boards and commissions. So that is interesting because that would be a quasi commission. Looks like Howard has his hand up as well.
Sure. Attorney Rifkin.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't actually have any quasi-public agencies of the city like the state of Connecticut, like CRDA or CHFA and the like. As Lori suggested, all boards and commissions of the city would be included in this disclosure requirement. The land bank, in fact, is a 501c3. It is not a city entity, either a public quasi agency or or otherwise.
Great. Thank you for that education, Attorney Rifkin.
Councilman Gale?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilwoman Surgeon raised an excellent question. And so I'm just looking at the list, and I do see like the Hartford Parking Authority is on the list. But I don't know if I see the Hartford Housing Authority. So I'm wondering, Mr. Corp Counsel, what whether it is here or whether we don't have the authority over it, or how is that connection?
Are you, Councilman Gale, talking about the Hartford Public Housing Authority or the
Yes, the Hartford Housing Authority.
Hartford Housing Authority is not an entity of the city.
But-
So
It's,
we have no, so we,
it's created under, it's established under state statute and federal law.
got it.
But don't we appoint the commissioners?
We may have some appointments, but that is not the touchstone as to whether or not they are under the control of the city of Hartford.
Okay.
Or an arm of the city of Hartford. I mean, we do, I believe, have some appointments to the land bank, but or members of the some city employees serve as ex officio members, but that again doesn't create a legal relationship that such that it would be deemed a quasi-public or any other kind of authority of the city.
So I'm hearing that those entities like the Hartford Housing Authority may be governed by state law. They may have their own ethics provisions.
They in fact do, yeah.
Okay.
Same thing with the MDC. I mean, you make appointments to the MDC. It is not.
Yeah.
For purposes of financial disclosure under our ethics law, it doesn't apply.
Okay, the only, thank you, Mr. Corp Counsel. The only other comment I have is to congratulate Lori and you all on adding number 44, because the list does seem to be a terribly long and exhaustive list. So congratulations for getting number 44 in there now, so that you don't have to think about every single position that exists when drafting this ordinance. So fully supported and happy to move to send it back to council with a favorable recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All right, the motion's been made by Councilman Gale, second by Councilwoman Surgeon to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation. Any other discussions on this item? Any other discussions, hearing or seeing none? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the ayes have it. This item is passed to council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry Meiserick,
Thank you.
and have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Yes.
Take care.
All right, next item, 2.6 is Council President Rosado, an ordinance amending chapter 17 of Article 17 of chapter 2 of the Hartford Municipal Code that had a public hearing on Monday, June 20th, 2022, which was item 5.1 on the May 23rd agenda regarding caller transmittal. I believe there's no other discussion on this. So, well, pending further information. So is there a motion on the floor?
Are we moving to postpone? I guess I moved to postpone this. I thought we were waiting for some.
Oh, nice. That's very flexible.
Yes, so it's motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone, yes.
Second.
Well, motion has been made by Councilman Gale to postpone, second by Council President Rosado. Any discussion on this item? Any discussion, hearing or seeing none, indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposals, any abstentions? Hearing or seeing none, the ayes have it. This item is postponed to the next council meeting. Next item 2.7, Mayor Broner with a company resolution authorizing the city to enter into a tax fixing agreement with Naeem Khalid doing business as 31 Kenyon Place LLC. Item 3.1 on agenda date November 14th. And I believe we have, here she goes, Director Aaron Howard from the Economic and Community Development Office of Development Services.
Good evening. Thank you, Councilman Clark, Council President Rosado, and all council members here tonight. I am here today. I actually have Peter Bryanton from our team, who's the project manager on this, and I've given him the opportunity to present a quick few slides detailing out the request and a little bit more about the project. That'll be followed by conversation with the property owner developer who is with us today. So with that, Peter, do you mind?
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm just going to share my screen here. Hopefully this works.
No way. Yeah, that would be really cool.
Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. So on the line with us today is Mr. Khalid, who is the property owner, and I believe his attorney, Richard Morgan, is also with us tonight.
Yes, I'm here. I'm identified under the Sam's user.
Thank you, Attorney Morgan. They'll be available to answer questions after the presentation. I'm just going to go through a brief presentation real quick for your background and knowledge, and then we'll take questions at the end. So this is a proposed development on 31 Kenyon Street. It is a tax fixing agreement request, and it is for the development of 5 townhouse units. The property is located in the West End on Kenyon Street, just off of Farmington Ave. It includes the new construction of 5 townhouse market rate rental units. Each unit will have 3 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a 1-car garage, and approximately 2,172 square feet per unit. The total project cost is approximately $1.4 million. The terms of the agreement include a 10-year tax fixing agreement per Connecticut General Statutes 12-65B, which mirrors the blight abatement program. In the years 1 through 5, it'll be a 0% increase and fixed at the current assessment. For the last 5 years, 6 through 10, tax payments will increase by 20% each year until 100%. And the future tax value was approximately $29,000. I should also note that this agreement is non-transferable to any other parties. So if something were to happen, like if their property were sold or they did not complete the development, then the tax fixing agreement would be null and void, and we go back to paying the 100% taxes. Community development benefits. The developer is required to meet the MWBE participation for vendors and subcontractors at 15% of total construction costs. The developer will make a good faith effort to hire Hartford residents for construction jobs at 30% of project hours, as well as to encourage MWBE participation for 15% of total project hours. The developer and its contractors will be subject to this city's living wage ordinance. This is another shot of the elevation and the floor plans. The first floor will have the garage and a bedroom. The second floor will have a living area and kitchen area and a 1/2 bath. And the upper floor will have 2 bedrooms, both with bathrooms. This is the rear elevation. And as I mentioned, Mr. Khalid and Attorney Richard Morgan are with us tonight to take any questions, or if you have questions for staff. So thank you. And I will turn it over to the chair.
Thank you for your presentation. So this is going to be at 31 Kenyon Street, that's correct?
That is correct.
All right. Can you go back to the tax fixing agreement? Go one more slide. Okay, thank you. So that's what I wanted to say. So all of these 5 townhomes are market rate, 3-bedroom. When are you looking to break ground on construction?
Well, this is, excuse me, Attorney Richard Morgan, here on behalf of Neem Holland and 31 Kenyon Place LLC. We've started a little bit. We have, I think on the last slide, it showed the foundation. So we just poured the foundation and then we put a stop to the project while we got into this tax fixing agreement. So we haven't done anything down there in several months. We anticipate final construction anywhere to take from 12 to 18 months, at least based on our loan documents that we have tentatively in place. So that's sort of where we're looking at for a time for completion.
And just for everyone's knowledge, since these are market rates, what's the market looking like for 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath?
We have our analysis that we did roughly maybe 4 months ago, and the numbers that we're working with are 2,500 to somewhere around 2,650. Now that's again, these were based on probably looking at the schedules here 4 or 5 months ago. As we all know, things have certainly increased quite a bit, but we don't anticipate things going anywhere north of the 2,650, at least not in the foreseeable future.
Okay, and do we have a term sheet that goes along with this?
From our bank?
Or from the
No.
city?
Yes, you do. There was a term sheet that was submitted with the council packet that is attached to the agenda.
Need to bring this up. Does anybody have this electronically we can pull on the screen?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Peter, can you please stop sharing your screen?
What do you want me to do? You want all of it, Councilman?
Yes, just the term sheet so we all can take a look at it, because I know that that's something that's probably of interest of all of us.
Okay.
Council Chair, if I may, while you were pulling this up, I'd like to point out we are doing this under the 12-65B state statute. What we mean by mirroring the blight abatement is this was a property that's set underutilized and vacant for quite some time, but our current ordinance that supports blighted property does not apply to vacant land. And so what we did was we took the tax structure that we apply for blighted property, where we fixed the current assessment for 5 years and then increased by 20% from year 6 to 10. We mirrored it off an existing tax structure that we do apply for blighted properties, where if someone comes to the city and determines their property is considered blighted, they are afforded a very similar tax structure to this by right.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So this is where, I'm sorry, the beginning of the agreement.
Yeah.
And
now with I saw 15% for OMBGA. Who's doing the compliance? How's that going to be checked?
Sure. Like all of our deals that we do, and we require the 15%, the 15, 30, 15, we do work with contract compliance. And so what will be required of the developer would be we would ask for a pre-construction meeting. Yes, they've started some construction, but we'll introduce them to the compliance team, and they will be required to utilize the LCP tracker. They will be required to get certified payroll, OSHA cards, you name it. They will be required to work with our compliance team to make sure that they are meeting those requirements under the contract.
Thank you. And is that still out of the procurement division's office?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm not going to hog up all the time.
I'll stop sharing.
I will Let me see. All right, there we go. Any questions from my Councilwoman Surgeon?
Thank you. So, I'm sorry, where was I? On your term sheet, page 1. Could you explain a little bit more for me when you said the 20% increase of difference? What does that mean?
Sure.
Or-
So it's a 20% increase in the assessed value. So a tax fixing agreement is fixing the current assessment value. And then what it will do is we take whatever that increase is, and we'll increase it every year thereafter from at year 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 by 20% to get to the fully assessed value at year 10.
Okay, so for construction period of time, you're just still at the current tax rate from year 1 to 5?
Correct.
They're looking at finishing construction in 18 months. So why would not include your 3 and 4 in the tax fixing agreement and leave the current taxes during construction time?
So when we looked at this deal, I think it's important to note to council members that new construction right now is still pretty difficult and challenging to do as it relates, especially in these townhouses, condos, even single family homes. We've seen some impacts to new construction. So the cost of construction is really high when it relates to these. They're larger units, but they're smaller units, right? So you get a difference in return when you're dealing like a 20 to 30 unit development versus a 5-unit development. There are site constraints on this property. It's been a challenging property. I can say that I know that we've been trying to get something here since I started back in 2019. And so in order to make the numbers work for the developer, we looked at a couple different iterations. And like I said, one of the things we looked at was this 5 years at 0% and the 20% increments to be very similar to what we're doing for blighted property, because we considered this a blighted vacant lot. And so we literally just mirrored it across. We have another statute that we have passed for rehabilitation of properties, and that percentage does have the 0% during construction, but it also goes up by 10%. So it's really just a matter of when we collect that additional increase. And so for this particular project, the numbers worked better by offering this 5-year at 0% and then increasing it to 20% every year thereafter. And just a reminder, if anything were to change, if they were to sell or any of that, this would just go back to a normal tax producing property and would not transfer to any other new property.
Thank you. So just one more question for you, Mr. Chair. So at the rental cost of the 26, Aaron, you run all the numbers. So are you saying with the rental expense of the 2650, so at the high end, their numbers wouldn't work without this tax fixing agreement?
The numbers are very tight in order to make it cost effective for them to be able to move forward. They were looking for an abatement in order to make this deal happen. I'll turn that over to the developer who can explain a little bit more on the financing side and the impact that it has for them.
Yeah, I can speak just, briefly on that. Is the numbers, they're tight. They work at the, what I had quoted there at the lower end of around the 25 and the higher end of the 2650. But I can say that part of our deal with our financial lender that we've worked with now for multiple months, it's contingent on this deal with this tax abatement. So per the bank, it does not work for them. Now, whether it works for us internally, maybe we could do something. I'm not sure. I'd have to talk with our internal team, but from a bank perspective, it is part of the deal with the bank that it's contingent. Our construction loan is contingent on this tax abatement agreement or tax fixing agreement, excuse me.
So one more question for you, just one more question and 2 more questions, and I won't hog this anymore. Normally, when you do like a blighted or tax fixing agreement, is there any, is all market rental? Haven't I seen either 20%, for maybe moderate income?
So in a lot of our development deals, we do try to push for some level of affordability. Again, we're dealing with larger developments. This is a much smaller townhouse style 5-unit new construction development deal. To bring it to anything lower, it would even make the numbers less from a revenue basis and would make it, I don't think these guys would have been able to qualify for any additional type of funding sources that would have supported an affordable unit to cover for that. And so it would have impacted their numbers and not make it cost effective in order to do this new construction deal. Councilwoman, I would say that because of the type of development this is as new construction, straight pure, it's not a renovation, it's not a rehab. And because of the size of the units, the numbers are just simply too tight to try to push anything of that nature at this time.
And through you, just one last question, I'm not going to hag it, to, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilman Gale, which I know is very active in the West End NRZ Association. Did they get approval from the NRZ for, for this construction there? Do you know, Councilman Gale?
I don't know the specific answer to your question, Councilwoman Surgeon. Perhaps the attorney would know, but what I do know is that at least I believe that the concept and the design was brought back to the West End Civic multiple times. This is something that's come up several times over the years with multiple developers who've come forward with similar proposals, but then been unable to move forward with them. So I think from the Civic Association standpoint, they're very happy that there is finally somebody, to their point, we actually saw construction. I mean, if you go by there, they actually did start with foundations. And I can also tell you that that property has been vacant since 1960.
Wow.
60 years. It's just been, at one point it was paved over. So then it was just like asphalt with grass growing through the cracks. It's really, to Director Howard's point, it's really been somewhat of a blight on the entire neighborhood for a very, very long time.
Thank you. Just wanted to say, Councilman Gale, as you know, I'm very involved or would respect the community and their support or not support of development in their neighborhood. So it really means a lot to me that the Western Association, I still call them the NRZ of the West End, are in support and in favor of this project.
Yeah, and I share your thoughts, Councilwoman. I certainly would not want to support this without knowing that WICA was fully supportive of it. And I really want to throw the question back to Attorney Morgan to see what the contact has been with the West End Civic Association and or Director Howard, if either know.
Yeah, well, I know you are right about going back and forth for several years since we purchased this property back in 2018. And it has been vacant, as you suggested, for that time. And our records from when we did our environmental reports and so forth, I could almost go back a century that we don't have a record of anything being on this site. As far as I know, we have all approvals. We have all, some of this was done with outside counsel, all approvals and all the go-ahead. And as far as I know, the West End Association has not had any objections or certainly anything that I'm aware of. I can get back to you on that and certainly make some inquiries and certainly confirm that.
I would appreciate that because it's very important to me to make sure that the community is in support. So thank you.
Councilwoman Hercules.
Thank you. I know it's stated market rate, but do you have a figure of what these condos or townhomes will be going for? Where they'll be listed approximately at?
I'm sorry, that was a question for me in terms of the monthly rent?
Yeah, yes, the monthly rent.
Okay, around 2,500 on the low end is what we did, and then probably for the in units we would be looking at 2,650 on the higher end.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions, if I may. Director Howard, when does if we pass this, when does this actually take effect? What did we consider the beginning of year one?
So what we have done, so this would be a question pushed back to the developer when we go and enter into the agreement. We can work with the tax assessor on the actual date. Right now, we've been working with them for quite some time. As you know, they have put a foundation in. So the question becomes, we can fix it starting at the date in which they pulled the permit to do the foundation. So they would already go backwards. So they would already be in their first year worth of development. Or they can go ahead and fix the assessed value of what it is today. But in doing so, that would put them probably at a different rate, because an increase in value, because once the basement is put in, it'll increase the value. So I think because, again, the numbers are so tight, the developer is going to opt to have it so that it's already started from that date, and they will already be in their first year of construction for this development project.
So we could, in passing this, we could say that it's effective as of October 1, 2022.
You could, but the only word of caution I would have on that would be, I have no idea what that impact would be as of right now on the value and how much of an increase that would be to the developer. That would ultimately, the assessed value, actually, I'm just thinking this out loud. It just means that their fixed value for the next 5 years, we can look at that, might go up a little bit. But eventually that 20%, 40%, 60%, they'll all ultimately get to that 100% value. It'll really just be whatever they are at this fixed value today. But again, it would change their numbers. I'd have to look. I don't know what they would be at a current assessed value, if that's actually changed to this point yet or not. But that would increase their fixed value for years 1 through 5.
Well, okay, I guess I'm a little confused. The 48, 88, 28, isn't that based on
That's the current assessed value as of that date. What I'm saying is I'm not sure.
Wasn't that October of 2021? I mean, it's more than.
Yeah, I would think it'd be October 1, 2021.
So that should be the current tax. It wouldn't change from the last reval.
It should not. The only thing that changes is depending upon when the basement or when the foundation gets poured. As we've already passed, we're 11/21 now, 2022. That value could increase slightly due to the fact that there is a foundation at the property.
I see. So you might want this to go back to 10/1 of 21.
Yes, and I think that would be in the best interest because all the numbers were put off of that date. So in theory, once they execute this agreement, they will have already been within about 1 year's worth of the agreement going forward.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And what happens along the lines of reval? What happens in 2026? Does this project get revaled in 2026 and a new 20% of a new tax rate applied?
Very good point. So all of our tax deals are all subject to whatever the valuations are. So when we present numbers and we present these things, they're at our best guess as of the date in which the value is of these developments. You are correct that every 5 years we reassess. So in their agreement, they will stick to whatever that 2021, the 488 value for the next 5 years. But even though we're showing you that their future value is going to generate, let's say, $29,000 in taxes, when we reval in 26, if that assessed value increases, that's what the 20% increases will be based off of, that increasement in value, not the previous number, right? So it'll always be subject to whatever our assessed values are. The only thing that will stay fixed for now in that first 5 years is what that current value is today.
Got it. Well, I think that's I like that. Thank you. Last question. You have this assessed at, and I assume the taxes are based on the 36.75 tax rate.
Yes.
My understanding is that this is essentially a 5-unit apartment house, and it's not subject to the 36.75. So are we fixing that assessment by passing this agreement? Is that?
No. So it'll be the responsibility of the developer to ensure that they achieve the residential assessed value of the property. The developer, since this is new construction, does have the ability to create the condoize out the whole development, which is what they're proposing to do. You are correct, though. If they do
Got it.
not condoize out the units, this will jump to a commercial rate, which is why all of those numbers are also approximate, and the responsibility will fall on the developer to ensure that they condoize out the units legally in order to achieve that 36% assessment.
Got it.
Now, the fixed rate, right, at the 4 point is based on value today, so that number is not going to change. What would change if they weren't able to get the residential would be those 5 years, because the assessed value would increase significantly. We'd see that change from years 6 to 10.
But to your earlier point, I take it if they sell any one, so they make 5 condo units, that gives them the residential rate. But if they sell one of those units, the tax fixing agreement on the sold unit is no longer in place.
We would tie this to I think we would tie this overall to the development. If they sell any portion of the interest in this property, the tax deal is null and void. This tax deal is based off the fact that they are making 5 townhouse units in this area. 12-65B is pretty clear that the tax fixing agreement is applied to, I think it's 4+ or 5+ units. So we wouldn't really be able to apply it anything less than that. So we would make sure in our agreement that if they were to sell any units or sell their interest or anything, sell the entire complex, the tax deal would be null and void.
Thank you. No other questions, Mr. Chair.
Council President?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. So congratulations, Mr. Naeem. I know that this land has been vacant since 2018. So it's great to see new construction in the near future. I love the design down to the color. So I pretty much, a lot of my questions were asked by Councilman Gale. So with that said, I'd like to make a favorable recommendation, a motion to move this back favorably to council.
Second.
Motion has been made by Council President Rosado, second by Councilman Gale, to move this item back to council with a favorable recommendation. Any other questions? Any questions? Hearing and seeing none, and all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposals?
Nay.
Hearing and seeing none. All right, we have 1 nay. All right. Any other abstentions? All right. The ayes have it. This motion is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
You're welcome, and everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. Okay, our last item on our agenda is item 2.8, Mayor Broner with a company resolution authorizing the transfers of fiscal year 2022 general fund budget, which was item 3.3 on the November 14th agenda. And right, last but certainly not least, Director Rawls, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. It's always a good thing to go last, right? I get to sit through and hear all the other discussion, which is always beneficial in my position. So I would like to take this resolution in 4 pieces because it contains a lot of year-end movement at one time. So I want to make sure that we're looking at each of the pieces in its own individual buckets. So the first part of the resolution is actually a move that was made off of a May 18th, 2022 resolution that was passed by City Council, and it designated where any fiscal 22 fund balance should go. So it's taken us a little while to get to this point. I have to admit that this audit season has been quite challenging for the finance department. Typically, we would be in this position maybe a month earlier, but you know, we're fighting some staff challenges. We've lost a lot of constitutional knowledge and recent retirements over the last year. So it's been quite a challenging season, but we're here finally. We've ended the year with a $16.7 million fund balance. And dating back to the May 18th, 2022 resolution that council passed, there were 2 non-financial resolutions. The first one states that after the first $5 million of surplus, The next $1 million should go to vehicle equipment and technology costs for fire and DPW. So of the $16.7 million of fund balance, we're going to take $5 million off. That'll bring us down to 11. And then for the resolution, we're going to take the next $1 million off for vehicle equipment and technology. So now we're at $10 million, $10.7 million of fund balance. The second non-financial resolution from May 18th, 2022 stated that after the $5 million to unassigned fund balance and after the $1 million to vehicle equipment and technology, the next $6 million of surplus should be directed to economic and community development. $3 million go into the south end, $3 million go into the north end. And of that $3 million for the north end, $500,000 would go directly to homestead. So now, if I take that $6 million away, we're now down to $4.7 million of remaining fund balance. So part one of this resolution is to take that remaining $4.7 million of fund balance after the $5 million to unassigned, after the $1 million to BET, and after the $6 million for economic development, to move it to capital projects. As you know, we pay outright for our capital projects through a pay-go program, and we need to direct as much funding as we can so that we can get these crucial infrastructure projects done for the city. So that's part one of the resolution. Apart from that, the next part of the resolution is to do a budget transfer. So I think it's no shock to council that at the end of fiscal year, both our police department and our fire department, due strictly to overtime, was over their allocated budget. Police, $155,000, and fire, $1.5 million. So part two of this resolution would be to transfer from the debt line, the debt service line, the $1.6 million so that we would cover the budget overages. So all that would do would rebalance the budget at the end of fiscal 22 so that we don't show any deficits in our budget surplus. And this is a typical transfer that you all see at this time of the year from finance or the budget team. Okay, so that's first few parts. The last part of this resolution is the Board of Education. So the Board of Education did not spend their full allocation from the city. They had a surplus of about $9.3 million. The request is to send $8 million of that $9.3 million to the school construction CIP fund to help fund future school construction. So as you're aware, when the state approves the city for school construction projects, there's always an out-of-pocket cost for us. Most of the time, the state will pay 95% and the city has to kick in 5% of the total construction value. So this $8 million would go towards the city's 5%. And that would be all of the movements included in this resolution. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilwoman Surgeon.
I just want to say to Director Rawls, that was quite a presentation and very simply put by breaking it down pursuant to the different buckets, which made it really easy for me to understand when I was reading the resolution.
Thank you.
In your presentation, you said there was a $9 million overage for the school, and you're putting $8.8 million to construction.
Correct.
What happened to the other $1 million?
The $1.3 million, Mayor Bronin decided to assign fund balance of $1.3 million. The Board of Ed is contemplating a relocation to their central office due to the heavy construction that is going on currently at Oakley. From what I understand, it's very disruptive to their day-to-day work, and it makes it challenging for them to conduct meetings, participate in remote meetings. So the Board of Ed would need funding to pay for that relocation if there is a decision to move forward with it. And this 1.3 would assist in any relocation costs if they decide to move in that manner. If they decide not to move in that manner, then at the end of fiscal 23, when we are in this process, as we are now, the year-end process, any unspent assignment of fund balance will just roll into unassigned fund balance.
Gotcha.
And I would like to clarify, Councilwoman,
Sure.
in order for the Board of Ed to use the $1.3 million, they would have to make a presentation to council for a budget transfer in order to use that. So it wouldn't be that council wouldn't have any say in that transaction.
Great, thank you. To you, Mr. Chair, just a couple more questions. When we did the CIP fund budget, CIP funds in the budget, there was not $8 million there. I'm sorry, I think it was 8 million. How much are we putting in back into CIP?
So this would be 4.7 to general city projects, and then 8 million to Board of Ed.
So when we did the CIP in the budget, we did not take in consideration that 4 million. So I remember in the budget hearing, Councilman Clark was very generous in his giveaways to the fire department for equipment. Is that going to be part of using that 4 million?
So equipment flows through our vehicle equipment and technology fund. So that's what that first $1 million of the resolution stated. So after the 5 million to unassigned, 1 million would go to vehicle equipment and technology, specifically for fire and DPW vehicles.
Okay, and I think
so that's where it would come from. So it wouldn't affect the fire vehicles would not come out of CIP. It would come out of a different bucket.
A different fund. Okay, great. Thank you so very much for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Councilman Gill.
So just to clarify, the 1.5 to fire and the 155 to police, that has nothing to do with the surplus. That's just money you're moving from one part of the budget to another part of the budget.
Correct, from debt service line to police and fire.
Okay, thank you. And then, I apologize, you may have said this already in answer to Councilwoman Surgeon's questions. I'm going back to the Board of Education. So the net result, the 8 million of the 9.3 would go to school construction, and the other 1.3 would come back. Does that come back to the general fund?
So it's sitting in the general fund now, but it is assigned fund balance. So the savings fell into our fund balance, but then we pulled them out and we said, this is being put aside for this specific purpose. So assigned fund balance, right? You could have total fund balance of, I'm just going to use generic numbers. Let's say $40 million. Of the $40 million, 25 million is unassigned. That means we can use it for whatever we want. The remaining $15 million would be used for specific purposes. In order to be used, though, in the next budget year, there would have to be a budget transfer, right? Like a one-sided increase to expenditures in order for them to spend down those funds. That would need to come to City Council first and foremost for a budget transfer approval. So you would see any use of fund balance come through you first.
That's what you were mentioning when you said the board would have to come back to council.
Correct.
Okay, so how does this affect, if at all, our minimum budget requirement?
It doesn't, because this is based on actual spend, and the minimum budget requirement is based on the total budget allocated to the board. So there is no change in our budget allocated to the board. They just did not spend everything they were allocated.
So we'd still have to, coming up in the next budget cycle, we still have to send the same, at least the same amount of money to the board. We couldn't, even though they had a $9 million surplus, we couldn't reduce the amount of money going to the board.
Correct. We can't reduce the budget by 9 million. Correct.
Thank you.
Welcome. And just for clarity purposes, there are 2 other assignments of fund balance this for fiscal year 22. The first, which would be coming to you after the audit is complete, is a legal settlement that council approved on June 14th through resolution for 510 Farmington Avenue. Howard and his team closed that transaction last week, actually, and that was for $1.8 million. So we did assign $1.8 million of fund balance to take care of that legal settlement, which included the purchase of 510 Farmington Avenue. The second assignment of fund balance is a $1 million reserve for Microsoft. Our IT department is currently undergoing an IT audit from Microsoft on our usage of their products and whether or not we've paid the appropriate fees. So that is not looking like it's going to come out in the city's favor, and we're reserving this $1 million to cover that. Should there be any favorability in any of these assignments, like I mentioned earlier to Councilwoman Surgeon, they would roll into an assigned fund balance in the following fiscal year. So fiscal year 23.
Thank you for that bit of information. Do appreciate that. Just curious. So Microsoft monitors the usage of their technology, and how often do they perform these audits?
This is the first time I've ever heard of any audit, Councilman Clark. Yeah. So, yeah, and it's their software usage, like Microsoft Office Suite, from what I understand.
Okay. Any other questions regarding this? Do you know when the development projects would get underway, or regarding the balance, the surplus for the north and the south?
Oh, okay. I do not know specifically which projects will be utilizing those funds, Councilman, but I can tell you that within the finance department, we created the projects. We used the resolution as the foundation for the creation of the project, but it's not our dual responsibility to spend that money, but it's there and available for spend now.
Thank you. And just for a reminder, refresher for everyone, what is the deadline for us to spend down the ARPA funds?
ARPA has to be spent down 12/31/24. It has to be committed 12/31/24, and I believe fully spent out the door in 26.
Okay. Thank you.
So it means you can have like an encumbrance at the end of 24, but really pay it out in 25 or whatever.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the director? All right. The chair will entertain a motion. Councilman Gale.
Yeah, I move we send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilman Gale, second by Councilwoman Surgeon, to send this back with a favorable recommendation. Any discussion on this item? Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposals? Any abstentions? Hearing or seeing none, the ayes have it. This item is passed with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Oh, same to all of you.
Thank you. Seeing that we have no other items on our agenda to discuss, I'll open the floor to my colleagues. Yes, Councilman Gale.
Just a reminder, for anybody that's interested, there will be a Turkey Day game, Turkey Day football game on Thanksgiving at 10 a.m. And it will be not at Dillon Stadium, or as it's now called, Trinity, whatever, but it will be at Hartford Public High. And it will be Hartford playing Weaver, and I believe that the field is going to be dedicated that morning during the halftime. That's right. During the halftime, there's going to be a little dedication ceremony to the retired coach. So anyway, see you all out there bundled up, nice and warm.
Yes, nice and warm. I haven't been to one of those in ages.
Oh, come on down. Come on down. I'll be there.
Okay, I'll be there. Wishing everybody happy Thanksgiving and thank you for that reminder.
Happy
Thanksgiving, guys.
All right, thank you. Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
This meeting is now adjourned. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Take care.
Good night.